Hi, Bill Landy joining you again on Interesting Individuals, and we are continuing our series of programs with Elston High School graduates, what they did in high school, and maybe some of the things they learned that was able to carry them to the outside world. Joining me is Rob McFarland and Eric McFarland. He is real, right? He's not a phone, is he?
No, he's real.
All righty. Just real quick, give me the years that you each graduated.
Well, I graduated in 1966.
Eric?
And I graduated in 1994, which was the second to last year that Elston was high school. Yep.
All right. Well, we're going to go over some things. Rob, I know what your biggest accomplishment was in high school, but we'll get to that. But are there any, for each of you, is there any class or classes that maybe stood out in your mind, or a teacher?
You know, probably I had a teacher named Bernie Lutens who taught world history.
Oh, yes, he's been on my show before.
And he was a terrific teacher, kind of made a big impression on me. And then also a teacher named Roberta Croft.
Okay.
And I remember the first day I came to school. We were sophomores because at that time freshmen weren't allowed.
Right.
And so we're standing out getting ready to come into the high school for the very first time, and we kind of hung in a pack. It was Terry Morris and Jim Cadwell and myself. Mm-hmm. Walked in the first door, and her class was right to the right. She was an English teacher, and she said, "You three, come in here." We went, "Oh my God, we're in trouble already." And we walked in, we went into the class, and she looked at us all, and she said, "You three have the biggest feet I have ever seen in my life." And we were labeled. That was my first 5 minutes at Elston with her. But I ended up having her in 3 or 4 or 5 different classes, and she was a very nice lady.
Mm-hmm. Wasn't she the one that Warren Jones put in charge of when you guys went to the state finals in basketball? Red horns or red clinkers? Or
yeah,
something?
I believe so.
She was the one that went ahead and did that. So you'd have to say Bernie Lutens and Roberta Croft. Now, was Harriet there yet?
She was the principal, or she was the secretary.
The secretary.
And I stayed away from her. I didn't want to get
everybody. You know what? She never seemed to trust anybody or believe anybody, and she just sat there, with her glasses and did her job, but you almost felt that you were being disciplined or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Eric, how about you? Teachers or classes?
Yeah, so I had a couple of really great teachers. As a matter of fact, I had Mrs. Croft in high school as well. The two probably that made the biggest impressions on me, though, would have been Jeff Freitag, who would have been my social studies teacher.
Yeah, okay.
Good friends of the family before, but really made sure I was kind of on the straight and narrow path and doing the right thing. I'll never forget in his class, I always got pretty decent grades. And there was one particular test that was a really tough test that he'd given us, and I had not studied and did really lousy on it. And he handed the test back to everybody the next day. And he was very disappointed in the entire class. And he looks right at me and he goes, I understand if people have bad days and don't do well and stuff, but when people I respect don't take my class seriously and get a grade like this, that hurts my feelings.
Wow. And
I can tell you it was the last test I did bad out of this class ever. I think I wrote an apology letter, so he was instrumental in.
He knew you had potential and you weren't showing it.
Correct. Certainly that day. Yes, certainly that day. So, and then I had Fran Booth, actually, I spent a lot of time with. She was an English teacher when I was there. And I spent a lot of time after school in her classroom between, practices and school and everything else. And she always made sure that I was, following the rules and getting where I was supposed to be going as well.
Now, Eric, we're going to concentrate on your athletic achievements. You were really busy.
Yes.
These tennis, basketball, and baseball. Well, let's talk about basketball.
Okay.
So, what years were you on the team?
So I played my freshman year. I did not go out my sophomore year, and then I played as a junior as well.
Okay.
When I was there, we were pretty good. We went to semi-state a couple of years. So Charles Macon would have been Mr. Basketball.
Was he
when I was there? He was 2 years older than me. So he graduated in 92. I graduated in 94.
All right.
And then, so Baseball was always my first love. I was a left-handed pitcher, so I kind of knew if I wanted to play beyond, that I would have to concentrate on that. And I got hurt a couple times in basketball. So
what happened?
He gave me some really bad ankles. Is what happened. So
it's an inherited thing.
it was inherited, and I don't want to give you any delusions. Basketball was definitely not my best sport.
All right, what about tennis?
So tennis is sort of an interesting story. I did not play as a freshman. It was the only semester at school that I didn't play a sport. And I was so bored and driving them crazy. They're like, okay, next fall you either got to go run or you got to play tennis. You got to do something. And I took a shine to it, really liked it, played for 3 years, 3 years of varsity. Fortunate to have good genes, left-handed, 6'4", 6'5", makes for a good net player, but had just a great experience. I took the other sports very seriously, worked really hard. Tennis was a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, do you remember they had tournaments, didn't they? Were you advanced in the team of that?
Yeah.
Do you remember how far you managed to go?
So we consistently, which is true of both tennis and baseball, lost to LaPorte in sectionals.
Okay.
They have very good tennis teams, very, very good tennis teams. I played doubles. And yeah, we were pretty good in conference. Outside of LaPorte, we usually beat most of the teams in South Bend, other than Penn and probably Mishawaka. Yep. We had a pretty good team though, but never got out of sectionals.
Okay, well, that happens sometimes. A lot of talent out there.
Yes.
Now let's talk a little bit about baseball. You're a left-handed pitcher. What was your overall record? Do you remember?
So I think our best year would have been my junior year. We lost to LaPorte in sectionals. I believe that year was like a 6-5, very good game, and they went on to win. I want to say they won state in 90. No, they won state in 92 and 94. Penn won.
92, I remember. I was covering that for WLOY COE radio.
Oh wow! Okay.
So 94. Do you remember what
we lost? So we lost in sectionals. We lost 1-0 to New Prairie. Right? Was it New Prairie?
Wow.
On a walk and a triple in the bottom of the 7th inning. It was a 0-0 game. The whole game. It's probably one of my better.
A tainted triple.
Yeah. Well, yes, but it was a great game. Just couldn't get out on top. But no, we were very good, very competitive. But definitely our best team was my junior year was the year that I think we lost to LaPorte 6-5. In the sectionals, and it was as close as we got to beating them. But our junior year, we had a lot of seniors that year that played baseball beyond high school, and then a couple of pretty good juniors that played as well.
Yeah.
So,
but getting back to the pitching, do you remember your one-loss record?
Yeah. Oh gosh. I don't. I know I had a lot of strikeouts and I hit a lot of kids I didn't like. But
I'll give you a little fact about Eric. That's an interesting Michigan City fact. He is the player that hit the last home run out of the park at Ames Field before they tore it down.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Well, you're a left-hander, so
left-handed.
that would work.
Yes. So the part of the story we don't like to tell was only about 300 feet to right field, and it was about 375 to left. But I did. I hit it off the jewel. It was against Marquette, so that's always nice to be able to give Marquette a home run like that. But yes, it's
Rogers.
Either one of them. Yes, either one of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you remember maybe your senior year or junior year what your batting average was?
So I hit close to 400 as a junior.
Good.
Senior year, probably 350 or so. I've got those stats somewhere. And pitching-wise, record was always at or above 500, mostly strike, not a ton of walks, had a pretty good control.
That was Donnie Thomas was the coach.
Yes. And senior year was a little different too, because, and I don't know if you would remember this, but my junior year would have been the last year Ames Field was used as a baseball field.
Oh, okay.
So my senior year we played at Gardena. Gardena. So kind of an interesting transition.
Sure. All right, Brett. Rob, now to you. Well, the 1966 state championship team, and I'm just going to go by things that I heard from Coach Adams in an interview told me, or maybe the Warren Jones told me. The so-called jinx about going to the old Calumet Regional and getting beat. And he made an interesting statement. He says, our team was never jinxed. He says, our city might have been, but not our team. And so you one of the big highlights is you won a regional
Yeah.
in Elkhart.
We won a regional in Elkhart. Michigan City had always won the sectional. I can't remember.
Oh, I know.
It would have been embarrassing to lose a sectional.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were moved over to the Elkhart, and that made a big difference. But one of the things that's interesting is if you remember the afternoon game of the state championship, we absolutely destroyed East Chicago, Washington, who we would have probably met if we would have gone the other way. So,
And you know what? That's something that Doug Adams said. He said, if I'm not mistaken, that was the best game you guys played all year.
yes.
Not that you didn't play well. No, you guys took charge on that, and everybody thought that well, they're going to get beat, and now of course there were late night pep sessions at like midnight when you guys would get back home.
Yeah, after regionals and after semi-state, those were really fond memories. We would come home and walk into that gym, and it was, just packed with people, and it was midnight or after midnight. And it's funny because all through high school, we always had 11 o'clock curfews for basketball on weekends. And quite frankly, if you were a Red Devil and you were out past, you got turned in by somebody. Some citizen somewhere turned you in, so it was unusual for us to be out that late.
I remember one of I think it might have been the semi-state, but Warren Jones said he called from Fort Wayne or one of the janitors for the school to get him to go open up.
Yeah.
So they had to maybe wake this guy up or something, or call him on a Saturday evening. Look, I need you to go down and open up the door and everything. And I thought he said that after the semi-state win, you guys, there was no school on Monday.
That's true.
Okay.
Yeah.
To give everybody like a little bit of a hiatus.
Yeah. The thing I also remember most about semi-state, which I don't know whether anyone's heard this story or not, but we had to spend the night. We had to go over. We wanted to be there early Saturday morning, so we spent the night Friday night. We went to breakfast. And sitting at the table was, once again, the three of us were always together. Jim Cadwell, Terry Morris, myself, and Fred DeBoard was there also.
Okay, sure.
And so we're having a nice breakfast, getting ready to go to play, and the waitress came up to us and says, "You boys want some coffee?" And we all looked at each other. We'd never had coffee in our life.
Wow.
Okay, so we went, we don't want to look like dummies. So we went, yeah, sure, we'll have a couple cups of coffee. So the four of us all drank coffee before that game. And we went to warm-ups, and we were like crazy people. And Adams, I can remember Adams before the game, said, "What is wrong with you three?" And the answer was 2 cups of coffee apiece.
Yeah.
And if you remember, that was the game where Stan Farber came in and Dennis Krieger came in and took Cadwell and myself out.
Oh.
And Terry, they relieved us all. And actually, if it would have been for those two in the bench, we would have had some trouble.
And I remember some of my research, and like Coach Adams says, there were a couple of games, maybe a couple of tournament games, regular season games. Third quarter, you guys were down 7 to 8 points, and then bam, you turned it around. I think, like you said, Krieger came in, and I guess he was one tough guy to guard as a forward or whatever.
I think that's what made made the team good. And Eric knows the same thing in baseball. When you have practice and you have to practice against the best, you become the best. So that's really true.
Yeah. So you got through the semi-state. It must have been that week leading up to the to the state title. The buzz around the school must have been just fantastic.
It was just a blur. I mean, everything was a blur. I don't think anybody studied. It's a blur to me. I remember pep sessions. I remember the newspapers, and at that time, a lot of newspapers were there taking pictures of our practice, etc. And were posing for things. It was crazy.
Oh yeah, I do remember this. I don't know what church it was, but they put up a sign, and it said, "Contrary to our normal policy, we too are backing the Devils." So
That's pretty good.
well, all right. You beat Indianapolis Tech, who of course naturally you knew nothing about.
Right.
And first of all, let's touch base on. Do you remember much about the Kokomo and Anderson teams that you played?
I remember Anderson had a guy named, I just remember his first name was Willie, great big guy, 6'8", and that was the one we were worried about getting through. He played for Anderson, And Terry took care of him, but in our zone. But not too much. I do remember, like I said, on the semi-state, I remember the coffee incident. I remember playing as a team, playing good basketball, especially in the night game.
Yeah. Now, did you throughout the year? Did you rely on man-to-man, or was it zones, or
well, that was the big thing that switched over. Doug Adams was always a traditional man-to-man person, and after about 3 or 4 games into the season, I had been hurt. Jim Cadwell had been out hurt, and we both came back, and I think everybody realized how slow we were. So at that point in time, he switched to a 2-3 zone, and it was a phenomenal zone because you had O'Neal and Hoppy Gibson out front, who with all their quickness, and then 3 at the time, pretty big guys in the back to take care of that business.
As far as guards go, Simmons and Gibson, they're up there among the top 2 or 3.
Oh my goodness!
Of them.
You know, I mean, my sophomore year, I was on a team with Vernon Payne. I sat on the bench and watched. I had a really good view of him all year, and he was a phenomenal player. Just phenomenal in the University.
I bet.
But Gibson and Simmons, they carried on the tradition of Michigan City of having great guards, and that went on for several years.
Great guards. Adams told me in the title game that during halftime, he told you guys you were going to have to be a little more aggressive on the rebounding, especially the offensive rebounding, because he said, if we get an offensive rebound, we're going to put it back in. And so I don't know the numbers, but you out-rebounded this team in the second half. I think by 10 rebounds or more. Yeah. And then the full court press that this team did in the last few minutes. And he said, well, something about you guys were not making the wide turn to avoid it. I mean, I don't know. That's what he said, something to that effect.
I always just thought, when you have 2 guards like Gibson and Simmons, it's not usually a very smart move to try to press them. And they usually took care of that business. But I do remember the rebounding, and I do remember him telling us that we had to get on the boards.
How many seniors were in that group? Were they all 5 seniors?
No, Larry was a junior. On that team, there were probably 6, 7.
He's always talked about how good those 2 guards were. I'm thinking about a team trying to press them and thinking that's just a horrific plan.
It just doesn't work.
I mean, they went around, like I said, the quickness and the ability to move. And again, like he said, that East Chicago game, you guys just blitzed them. I mean, you had them down by like 20 points or something.
It was a good game.
It was a good game, and he said we never played a better game. So, well, each of you we've shared favorite teachers and classes, but is there still right now any one thing that you can look back on your high school years and say, I learned this or I did this and it's helped me in the outside world?
Yeah, I mean, for me, absolutely. I learned, especially not just school, but from the baseball side of things. I went through a couple of injuries when I was a senior, arm injuries. So then when I got to college and I played baseball at Butler, but my freshman year there, I tore my ACL, and I remember doing the medical red shirt, and the amount of work that you have to put in to get back from an injury like that I learned specifically with, and I should mention my trainer in high school was Don Crowder, and he took care of me for 4 years, and there was never a game that I was on the field where he wasn't partially responsible for getting me out there and teaching me how to take care of my body and take care of my arm and how to maximize my potential. So I was never the biggest, strongest, fastest, most athletic, but I certainly felt like I outworked a lot of people, especially once, and that's something that was instilled in me from the time I was in school. I'll never forget kind of Donnie Thomas being my coach, and his thing always was it didn't matter what your injury was. He always made you come in and swim in the pool before school at 5 a.m. So it didn't matter what injury he had. His plan was to solve it by getting you swimming. And I will never forget my My junior year, I fouled a ball off my foot in the cage and hopped around for no more than a half a second. He goes, McFarland, you're in the pool. And for the rest of the season at 5 a.m., I was getting up and swimming because I fouled a pitch off my foot. So,
oh boy,
yeah. So we had a good time. We have a lot of great memories.
Rob,
a lot of great memories.
You know, I remember Elston it was a large place. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of kids there. There was only 3 classes, and there was close to 3,000 people. You had to learn how to get along with everybody. Mm-hmm. And you had to learn how to get along, and you had to learn to respect everyone. And so I think that's something that I learned there, along with, as Eric says, you know, it was a very competitive atmosphere. You know, to make that basketball team was not an uneasy feat. There was a lot of good people, mm-hmm. players, who didn't make it. So you learned how to be competitive. And then you learn some of the life lessons. I always remember Doug Adams. He called me into his office one time because I maybe had a little bit of a big head after one of the games, and he had a bowl of water sitting on his desk. And he said, McFarland, I said, yeah. He said, put your finger in this bowl of water. I put my finger in the bowl of water. I said, now pull it out. And I pulled it out. I said, you see how big a hole that left? That's how much we'll miss you. You know, turn it around. And it was a good lesson. You know, you're not irreplaceable.
I think my final question, Rob, to you. Adams had really good teams before mm-hmm. your team, and he had some afterwards. But what do you think it was, the makeup or the character or ability of your team to pull it off and win that title?
You know, and once again, I'll go back to that respect. I think all the players respected each other. I think that if we were playing in the game and he pulled us out and put someone else in, we understood that was for the good of the team. And I don't know I can't speak for those other teams, but I know that was definitely true for our team. Mm-hmm. If Sam Garrett came in for Larry Gibson, that was the best thing to do. And if Krieger came in for me, come on in, Dennis, and do the job. I'm happy with that. And that was really, truly a belief then.
All right, then. Rob McFarland and Eric McFarland, thank you, gentlemen, both, for coming on and talking about your years at Elston. Sounds like they are really memorable years and fun years. And thank you again.
No, thanks for having us.
That's this segment of Interesting Individuals. I'm Bill Landing. See you again soon.